Good morning, everyone. Go ahead and feel free to drop it off with Mr. Moore there. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Lee County Board of County Commissioners Zoning and Comprehensive Plan Amendment hearing for Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. The time is 9:31. This morning, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mora. And I assume, I have a couple cards that don't say the topic on there, but I assume they're for the River Hall comp plan case, right? Yeah, okay, very good. All right, let's take up our first case. I'd like to recognize Mr. Mora and his team for the Colusa K CPD zoning case.
Thank you, Commissioner. Staff will present this item to you.
Very good.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Beth Workman. I'm with the zoning section. Before you today is Colusa K CPD DCI 2022-00017. It is a minor amendment to an existing CPD to add EMS, fire, or sheriff station, limited to sheriff station in the retail tract. In the retail tract of the development to reduce retail square footage from 96,500 square feet to 89,600 square feet. The third item is to add 60,000 square feet of self-storage use on parcel 3, add warehouse, public, and mini warehouse to the schedule of uses for parcel 3 only, increase height on parcel 3 for self-storage use only from 35 feet to 38 feet above average grade or 45 feet above mean sea level, whichever is lower. And the last thing was to update the master concept plan to reflect these changes. There was one participant of record. The hearing examiner recommended approval subject to conditions. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions on this case? Okay, seeing no questions at this time, does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Good morning, Commissioners. Stacy Hewitt with Banks Engineering, representing the applicant. I'm available for questions, and we also have Ted Treesh here on transportation, and I'm just here for questions or if any response to public.
Very good. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call Deborah Swisher Hicks. Deborah, would you like to make a presentation? Very good.
Okay. My name is Deborah Swisher Hicks. I'm a resident on Pine Island. I live in St. James City. When I went to the meeting, I brought forth my questions and my concerns with the way it's being applied, the rules and laws are being applied. Unfortunately, they weren't addressed in the final say by the examiner because the main concern has to do with the retail tract. My understanding is, I thought was 5 of you, but the 3 of you have the final say as to whether this is being appropriately applied and is within the Pine Island plan because it's within that area. So my assumption is that. And the main reason that I'm having a problem with it is because the board, previous to you guys, approved a resolution of Z13007, which allowed, 29,100 square feet of usage on that lot. Not pieces, but on the lot, over the oversized lot. And they're stating by reducing the retail tract by 690 square feet that the road isn't going to be impacted because of the use of a mini storage that's going to be behind the Publix. Right there is just logic, doesn't necessarily connect because 690 square feet of retail is not that many car usage change up to offset the now usage of the Publix, not Publix, but the mini storage is what they're calling it. And they want to increase the lot usage from 29,100 by adding another 60,000 on top of that. 60,000 square foot of usage is a lot of usage. It doesn't fit within the Pine Island plan, which typically only allows the commercial uses being 10,000 square feet. So it's adamant that allowing a mini storage unit back there doesn't fit the Pine Island plan, exceeds the already allowed usage by what the board has allowed previously. The thought that 6,900 square feet would make a huge difference in our traffic impact, which would allow a mini storage, is not logical.
Thank you very much for your comments this morning, Ms. Swisher-Hicks. Your time has expired. I appreciate it.
Oh, we're limited on this forum?
Yes, it's limited to 5 minutes this morning, and so thank you very much. I appreciate your comments this morning.
Okay, that's good to know for the next one that I need to come to, because if this one piece fails, the whole app packet should be failed.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. At this time, that concludes the participants of record for this case. Would the applicant wish to make any comments?
Yes, for the record, Stacy Hewitt. I just would like to clarify that the reduction is 6,900 square feet of retail use, and that comparison with the traffic for 60,000 square feet of self-storage use that's where the reduction of traffic comes in the impacts on that. And if there's further questions on that, I do have Ted Treesh here.
Yeah, if maybe you or Mr. Treesh could just put it in plain English, because I think, I've gotten a chance to do this for a few years now, so I've seen these cases before and understand how the equivalent works. But for the folks who are maybe here for their first time today trying to understand it, I could envision a scenario where a retail store, even if it is a small retail store, if it's a very busy one, could have quite a bit of traffic coming in and out at all hours of the day, whereas a self-storage unit may not have that same level of traffic. But if Mr. Treesh wants to address that, I think that'd be appropriate at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ted Treesh with TR Transportation Consultants. Commissioner Hammond, you summed it up very well, that a self-storage use, although it is much larger in square footage, generates very little peak hour trips just because of the type of use it is, and it's visited very infrequently during the peak hours, whereas a retail use is quite busy during the peak hours. So as you indicated, based on the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers, report that we use that's accepted by the county, the reduction in the 6,900 square feet, even though it's a 60,000 square foot self-storage facility, it's quite a bit of reduction in trips compared to the self-storage use during the peak hours.
Very good. Commissioners, do you have any further questions on this?
I have a question. It said approval on, recommending approval on conditions. Can we get the conditions explained to us?
Yeah.
So the condition pertained to the self-storage building because of the height change. So it was a deviation number 8, which sought relief from LDC 33-1083C, which was a requirement that new commercial buildings are limited to 10,000 square feet unless approved by variance deviation, designed to minimize the appearance of a single large box standard franchise design to allow a 60,000 square foot mini storage warehouse building on parcel 3. So this was part of a new deviation that came in as part of the zoning, and it was conditioned, excuse me for 1 minute. It was approved subject to consistency with the CPD's existing architectural theme, which is the commercial theme in the Pine Island, Greater Pine Island Community Plan, was the condition that was added to that as part of the deviation, having to do with architectural standards.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth, would you point out where parcel 3 is on the site?
Oh, certainly. So parcel 3 north is going to be to our left. Parcel 3 is right here. The public shopping plaza is right here. And then the out parcel part is right here along with these. And then, of course, Pine Island Road is out here. So the mini warehouse proposed is in this vicinity right here.
Very good. All right, commissioners, any further questions on this item? Would somebody wish to make a motion?
Right. The only comment I wanted to make is that, I always like to see the addition of an additional EMS sheriff office as we continue to grow. Transit time for emergencies and stuff is critically important. So as we sporadically put these around, I think it's a great addition for the community.
Excellent.
I'll make a motion to approve.
So the
second.
motion for approval is from Commissioner Greenwell, and the second is from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right. Please introduce item number 2, the Cypress Lake Center DRI.
Good morning. For the record, my name's Dirk Danley. I'm in the zoning section of community development. This case is DRI 2018-10002. It's a Cypress Lake DRI rescission. The request is to rescind the DRI consistent with state statute 380-115-2. By way of reference, it's in the southwest quadrant of Cypress Lake and South Tamiami Trail. The hearing examiner did recommend approval of the rescission. This case is open to the public, and staff and the applicant are here with any questions you may have.
Very good. Any questions, commissioners, at this time? All right. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Steve Hartzell with Pavese Law Firm. I'm here on behalf of Chick-fil-A, which is actually the subsequent applicant to the Collier Family Trust, who started the original application. I'm happy I've got a presentation put together here. The statute provides that once the applicant one of the owners has demonstrated that all of the conditions of the DRI have been mitigated and have met the requirements of the DRI, the statute provides that the board shall rescind. We've gone through the process with the staff and demonstrated that all of those conditions have been met. Staff has recommended approval. It's gone to the hearing examiner, who has recommended the same thing. So I'll be happy to put the presentation on unless there's a motion.
Okay, very good. Commissioners, I think, any questions for the applicant at this time? No? Okay, thanks, Mr. Hart.
Thanks very much.
At this time, this one is open to the public. Has anyone come to speak in public comment on the Cypress Lake Center DRI today? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment on this case. Commissioners, does anybody wish to make a motion or have any questions?
I'll make a motion.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Sandelli. The second is from Commissioner Greenwell. Do we have any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing no further discussion, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, let's introduce the Rahaman's Estates subdivision case, please.
Commissioners, good morning. For the record, Anthony Rodriguez, manager of the zoning section with community development. Our next case this morning is a somewhat unusual one. This is the Rahaman's Estates subdivision. What this essentially is doing is a request for the board to adopt a resolution pursuant to Lee Plan Article Chapter 13, Sub A1F, to provide current and future property owners of lots 8 through 11 of the Rahaman Estates subdivision as recorded in the public records with the rights to construct a single-family home and to otherwise enjoy the property as a single-family residence with associated accessory structures and uses. This comes out of an errantly approved plat that does not conform to the Lee Plan, specifically the Buckingham Community Preserve, Rural Community Preserve, which requires a minimum lot area of 1 acre, and lots 8 through 11 of this subdivision are approved with lot areas in conformance with agricultural zoning requirements, which exceed 39,500 square feet, but are less than 1 acre. And so what this resolution will do for you today, if adopted, is it will legitimize the plat as approved and will allow construction of single-family residences on those lots. The county attorney's office is here with any questions you may have, and staff can answer any as well.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions on this one?
I have one question.
Commissioner Greenwell?
Just so everyone's clear, those lots are just slightly under 1 acre, is that right?
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct. 3 of the lots are .96 acres, 1 is .97.
Any questions? No. All right. Very good. Thank you for that introduction. Is there an applicant that wishes to make a presentation on this one?
This is a staff item.
Staff item? Okay, very good. All right, so the applicant has presented. This one is open to the public for comment. Has anyone come to comment on the Rahaman Estates subdivision resolution this morning? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioners, would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Greenwell, and the second is from Commissioner Sandelli. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right. Please introduce the Alico Crossroads case.
Good morning, everyone. I appreciate your time here today. For the record, Joe Saraceno from the planning section, talking about CPA 2021-00012 and CPA 2022-00008, the Alico Crossroads small-scale amendment. This request will amend the future land use map to change roughly 46.7 acres of industrial commercial interchange to general interchange, and it will also amend Table 1B to accommodate residential development on the subject property for this future land use category in the Gateway Airport Planning District. This change allows the applicant to pursue a mixture of residential, commercial, and hotel uses on subject property. And because this is under 50 acres and is a amendment to the future land use map, it's a small-scale amendment which is going for adoption today rather than for transmittal. This slide shows the existing future land use map on the left and the proposed future land use map on the right, showing the subject property outlined in red. The subject property is just west of I-75 near the Alico Road exit, and the properties to the north include several large offices, including Scotland Logistics and Neogenomics, and the property to the south is a multifamily development currently under construction. Adequate potable water, sanitary sewer, solid waste, police, fire, EMS, schools, and mass transit services are available to serve the subject property. The area is expected to grow as an economic center, and this type of residential development will provide a diversified housing option for the area aside from the predominantly single-family homes. This provision for the future employment base of this economic center is consistent with policies 135.1.9 and 158.1.9. Consistent with policy 158.3.5, this change does not impact the amount of land that is available for industrial uses. Because this land was in the industrial commercial interchange future land use category prior to 2007, there's no requirement to develop it as an industrial property. And the same level of industrial development is available in the proposed future land use category as is currently permitted. The proposed policy would allow for a diverse housing option to support workers of the nearby existing and future employers without losing existing industrial development land. The concurrent rezoning application must still comply with the LEA plan in order to receive a favorable recommendation. This rezone will ensure compatibility with the mixture of uses on the subject property and assure residential uses will be located outside of airport noise zone C, consistent with policy 5.1.2. Public services can be provided to the subject property. There were no public comments at the local planning agency hearing. Staff and the LPA recommend that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed small-scale amendment. And staff is available for any questions.
All right, Commissioners, any questions at this time? Okay, at this time, do you have a question?
No, just a comment. I mean, I think when we put residential in the proximity of jobs, the base, we think in terms of density and so on and so forth, but the fact of the matter is also helps mitigate traffic, because travel time, which is important to everybody. So, just a comment.
Okay, very good. At this time, does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
not unless you want one. Neil Montgomery for the record. Mr. Jalisi is here, our traffic consultant's here, our engineer's here. We can say what you just heard again. This category is consistent with what's on the map to the south. You've done a splendid job of economic development, but we got to let people live closer to where they work. So if you want a long presentation, we can do it. Otherwise, we'll just answer questions.
Very good. If the board pleases, then I think if anything comes up in public comment, we'll reach out to you for questions, but the staff presentation was comprehensive.
It was. Thank you.
Very good. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to public comment on the Alico Crossroads Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Has anyone come to speak to that this morning? Okay, seeing no public comment, then I'll close public comment. Commissioners, any discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion for approval from Commissioner Greenwald, and second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, please introduce the Grand Bay item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brandon Dunn with the Lee County Planning Section here today to talk about CPA 2022-06 and CPA 2022-07. These are privately initiated map and text amendments to the Lee Plan. The requested amendments are an amendment to map 1C, which is our mixed-use overlay map. It would add 15.64 acres to the mixed-use overlay. There is also a concurrent text amendment, which would amend Lee Plan Policy 5.1.10 to bring it into consistency and align it with the way we define density in the Lee Plan's glossary. These amendments will allow for a mixture of development clustered on the eastern side of the property. As you'll see in upcoming slides, the western side of the property is within the coastal high hazard area, so these amendments will allow for clustering outside of the coastal high hazard area. The map amendments are consistent with Policy 1.1.4 as they help to encourage mixed-use development within the urban community future land use category. There are available public services at the property consistent with Objective 2.2. It does meet the requirements to be added to the mixed-use overlay as in proximity to Lee Tran stops, proximity to available public services, nearby commercial uses, and the ability to add to the mixed-use overlay without intruding into single-family homes. Through the planned development, you will see that the pedestrian and automobiles are either currently available or are being created through that planned development rezoning, consistent with Policy 11.2.2. As for the text amendments, I'm not going to read this all to you, but I did want to show what the amendments were. These amendments will greatly simplify this language. It is consistent with the definition of glossary and the density. It removes requirements for planned development rezoning, so you would be able to apply the same standard to combine multiple land use categories under one project for conventional rezonings as well. It also removes requirements that properties were under single ownership prior to 1992. This was originally put in place as a case-specific amendment. Otherwise, it's kind of arbitrary, so we're removing that requirement. It does not change protections of environmentally sensitive or non-urban areas within the Lee Plan. Staff concludes that the area is appropriate for mixed-use development. The map amendment is consistent with policies 11.2.1 and 1.1.4. There are adequate public facilities. The proposed text amendment aligns with definition of density, and no internal inconsistencies were identified with the proposed text amendments. Both staff and the LPA recommend the BOCC transmit the proposed amendments as provided in Attachment 1.
Okay, very good. Commissioners, any questions at this time? No? All right, thank you, Mr. Dunn.
The applicant is here if you would like.
Yeah, would the applicant wish to make a presentation on this one?
Good morning. I'm Steve
Morning.
Hartzell with Pavis Law Firm. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, along with the rest of the team. We do have a presentation. In short, the request for the map amendment and for the text amendment are really, they're also concurrent with a plan development application which is scheduled before the hearing examiner. Our request is really for the purpose of allowing the applicant to move density from property that they own that's in the coastal high hazard area and in lower land use category into the mixed use category and essentially cluster that development in their area where it makes more sense for the development to be. They are concurrent with a plan development application, so this is one where you get 2 bites at the apple. If this is transmitted, we will go to the hearing examiner and present our case. Then both of those will be back to you for adoption. So we're happy to make a presentation here, or we can answer any questions.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions at this time? Commissioner Sandell?
Just a comment, I always appreciate the work that the LPAs do. They dig into this, they're experts in what they're doing. If you look at the vote here, there was 2 absent, but the other 5 were for transmitting. So I always appreciate their endorsement.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. At this time, this one is open to the public for comment. Has anyone come to speak on the Grand Bay Comprehensive Plan Amendment today? Okay, seeing none, then I'll close public comment. Commissioners, any discussion on this item? No? Would anybody like to make a motion then?
Make a motion.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Sandelli. Second is from Commissioner Greenwell. Any further discussion on the motion before I call the question? Okay, seeing none, then are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time, we will take up the comprehensive plan amendment for River Hall.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Brandon Dunn with Lee County Planning Section, here to discuss CPA 2021-016. This is a privately initiated map amendment. As you can see up on the slide, this map amendment involves approximately 392 acres with multiple land use categories. The overall result of the density, the changes that are being proposed and recommended by staff would be an increase to 489 dwelling units. There is a concurrent plan development rezoning that will help identify where these will be located and how the density will fit within the community. Staff has reviewed the case and finds that the future land use changes increase the overall density within River Hall by 0.2 dwelling units an acre, and find that to have minimal impact with the character of the area and the character of the Colusa K Shores planning community. The property has available infrastructure as required by 95.1.3 for the regulatory standards of infrastructure. The public information meetings were held by the applicant consistent with policies 17.3.2, 17.3.3, and 17.3.4. And as I had previously said, regulatory levels of service are met consistent with policies 95.1.3. In conclusion, the changes will not impact the overall character of the Colusa K Shores community plan area. The applicant has conducted the public information meetings that are necessary. There are adequate levels of service that exist, and some segments of the transportation do fail. That is not regulatory level of service within Lee County, and staff and the LPA do recommend that this be transmitted to the state for review. The applicant is here with questions or with their own presentation as well.
Very good. Any questions for our staff before we bring up the applicant? Okay. At this time, then, I'd like to call for the applicant to make their presentation. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. For your record, I'm Russell Schropp with the Henderson Franklin law firm, here today on behalf of Greenpoint Communities for a future land use map amendment for the remaining undeveloped portions of the River Hall community. Grady Myers, is the president of Greenpoint, is here with me today, as is our consultant team, which you can see on this screen.
Yeah, just click that X.
Yeah, I think
there you go.
they don't mess things up. Yeah, our consultant team is shown on the screen here. They did address the LPA. At this point, Jennifer Sapin's going to handle the bulk of our presentation from a technical standpoint and summarize the presentation, but our remaining consultants are available to answer any questions or provide additional information should you need it. This is the request before you today is, as I said, a future land use map amendment for the remaining undeveloped portions of River Hall. The amendment covers approximately 391 acres. The land area is shown in purple, and the current boundary of River Hall is outlined in the white there. As you can see, River Hall borders State Road 80 to the north and Lehigh Acres to the south. The Portico project borders to the southwest of River Hall, and further to the west of that is the Buckingham 345 project. Both of these were recently approved for comprehensive plan amendments to increase the residential density on them. The plan amendment areas shown in purple basically cover about 25 acres in the north part there, adjoining or nearby to State Road 80 at the north end of River Hall. And then there's a large undeveloped tract or portion of River Hall kind of sandwiched in between River Hall Country Club and Hampton Lakes communities that are presently developing and have been developing within River Hall for some time. There are also some smaller land areas that are within the plan amendment area that are difficult to see on this map. You can probably make them out, but Jennifer will walk you through that acreage breakout in greater detail shortly. Some of the plan amendments here are proposed to increase density, and some are proposed to decrease density, but overall the plan amendment, as requested, would increase the potential unit count within the current River Hall by 489 dwelling units, as staff mentioned. I think probably all of you are familiar with River Hall and have seen River Hall evolve over the years in reaction to some changing economies and also planning and development strategies, both on the part of the developer as well as the county. This slide presents a brief history of the River Hall project from a comp plan and zoning standpoint. The original zoning for River Hall actually dates back to 1999, and it was then known as a project known as Hawks Haven. And at that point, the project area-wide was not as big as it is today. It was only 1,797 acres at that point, and the future land use map was predominantly rural, with an area of suburban on State Road 80 at the northwest part of the project. The density at this time in 1999 was limited to 1,598 dwelling units. In 2005, the project went through its first zoning modification. That added about 181 acres to the project boundary, bringing the land area to 1,978 acres. It increased the unit count to 1,999 dwelling units total, and it also rezoned a portion of the project to commercial plan development for a small town center of about 45,000 square feet, and added a school site that has become River Hall Elementary. Again, the land was designated still as predominantly as rural, with a small area of suburban up at State Road 80. As we all know, the Great Recession hit in the 2008 to 2010 period, the late 2000s, causing numerous projects within the county to stall or to fail. The then owners of the River Hall project went through a bankruptcy at that time, and Greenpoint Communities ended up by acquiring the bulk of the undeveloped land in River Hall in 2010 through a bankruptcy sale. In 2012, Greenpoint embarked on what turned out to be a fairly lengthy process of amending the future land use map and the zoning to increase the density of the project to 2,695 dwelling units and adding a few uses. That plan amendment, while approved by the board, was ultimately challenged by third parties, but the plan amendment was ultimately upheld after going through the governor and cabinet and I believe the courts. At that time, there was a policy in the Colusa K Shores plan that, as well as other community plans, I should mention, that future land use map amendments needed to show an overriding public necessity in order to increase density. But that policy has since been removed from the comprehensive plan for Colusa K Shores, as well as other comprehensive plan, community plans. As I noted earlier, the present plan amendment would increase and both increase and decrease density allowed on certain developer-controlled parcels in River Hall. The staff recommendation is for approval, and the local planning agency also unanimously recommended approval at its meeting on October 24th. At this point, I'd like to bring up the project planner, Jennifer Sapin, to do somewhat of a streamlined presentation from what was presented to the LPA and summarize the materials that were provided in your packet. So unless you have any questions of me, I bring up Jennifer at this point.
Any questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Jennifer Sapin. I'm a certified land planner with Barak & Associates. Before we get into the plan amendment, I'd like to look at the area kind of in general and what has changed since the 2005 amendments. Starting first on the north side of State Road 80, you'll see 3 commercial plan developments here. On the right, Old Olga Square, that is at the entrance of River Hall at River Hall Parkway. And you can see here, changes have been made to allow over 350,000 square foot of commercial uses there. Traveling west at State Road 31 and State Road 80, there's 2 commercial plan developments which allow over 400,000 square foot of commercial. So those commercial services will be there and be available for the future residents at River Hall. You can see Veranda here is mostly built out. Traveling west on the west side of Buckingham Road, there are 2 developments, Portico and Buckingham 345. You can see in the table on the bottom left, 2 comprehensive plan amendments have been approved for those 2 projects. Those density increases are shown here. What's important to note is both of those comprehensive plan amendments were from sub-outlying suburban to outlying suburban, which is very similar to our request today. Looking inside River Hall, the first thing you'll see is that the preserve area and development footprint has been unchanged since 2005. You can see the preserve in aerial here, and then in color, the 3 distinct different communities. There's Cascades, shown in purple. All 3 of these are gated communities. Cascades is a 55 and up community, followed by Hampton Lakes, which is yellow. That's a neighborhood community, and then the family community, and then the Gulf is shown here in green. This allows 3 distinctive communities, 3 different lifestyles, and 3 different price points within River Hall. The project is very active, currently ongoing with development orders and permits. You can see in bold, there are 4 development order parcels under review, over 100 active builder permits, and we have roughly only 110 units remaining within the current approval. As Russell went over, this shows the request. It's on just under 392 acres, a net increase of 489 units. This will result in a River Hall overall density of 1.6 units per acre. Keeping in mind those 2 projects that I mentioned to the west, Portico and Buckingham 345, allow up to 3 units per acre. So we're still almost half of what are allowed for those 2 projects. The amendment area, as Russell mentioned, increases some land areas which will decrease density and some will increase density. To break down the request, I have separated them into 3 different areas. First, north by the entrance. You can see on this graphic here, the current future land use is in the bottom left of the slide. The proposed is in the top right of the slide. So area 1 by the entrance, you can see is changing from sub-outlying suburban to suburban. And then looking at the number 2 in the bottom right of the slide, the change there are a couple different changes. This is an undeveloped area and golf course. This is the main area where the future density will go, is in area 2. And then the third is our little map cleanups. Starting with the little map cleanups, again, the current future land use in the bottom right and the proposed in the top right, the little red circles show the areas that are changing. These are small little rights-of-ways that are currently sub-outlying suburban. We are proposing to move those to rural, which will decrease density. Really the main idea behind this is to clean up the county's future land use map and eliminate these just oddball little pockets that are causing our mapping GIS system some problems. The North Amendment area is from a 25-acre parcel, sub-outlying suburban to suburban. You can see here that this is an eastward extension from what is already existing suburban within River Hall, the Cascades portion, the 55 and up within River Hall. It is near the entrance at River Hall Parkway. This is a lighted intersection, and it will allow these uses on either side of the road. The density increase in this area is 101 units. The larger amendment area in the south is a little more complicated. There are 3 different conversions. You can see those on the table here. The biggest one to look at is the bottom row there of sub-outlying suburban to outlying suburban, where you can see that is an increase of 277 units. As I mentioned, Portico and Buckingham 345 were both approved for a conversion from sub-outlying to suburban, or outlying suburban, so our request is mimicking what has been approved over there. This increased density along the southern line also creates a transition between the rural lower density north of this requested amendment area and then to the south in Lehigh, where up to 10 units an acre could be allowed with bonus density. So looking at that 277 unit increase, what is the difference then between those 2 future land use categories? It's pretty straightforward. Whether or not the infrastructure needed for this higher density is in place or is it not in place. So looking at what we have for infrastructure, we have an existing roadway network, we have potable water and sanitary sewer, sized and appropriate for the requested density, and the water management system is owned, operated, and maintained by the Community Development District today. So in summary then, the increase will, this requested amendment would increase density from 1.4 units per acre to 1.6 units an acre. And this amendment would allow up to 3,184 units on the project for an increase of 489 units. One of the things I wanted to look at is access, because there are a lot of things that have happened in 2022 and will be happening in the future that are going to greatly improve access for the residents of River Hall and Portico. First, you'll see in the number 1 up at River Hall Parkway at State Road 80, a traffic light was installed in 2017. Access points 2 and 3 are each emergency accesses. Those access points are not used on a daily basis, only by emergency EMS vehicles, or in the instance where Portico entrance or River Hall entrances were compromised in some way, those access points could be opened up and allow the 2 projects vehicular mobility between the 2. Access number 4 is our first southern entrance into Lehigh. At time of LPA, it was 80% constructed. It's probably a little bit more constructed by now. The 5th access point would be a new southern entrance into Lehigh. This one is new, and it is included in our companion rezoning application, which is running concurrently with this. And when this, if you recommend transmittal to state, when this comprehensive plan amendment comes back, the rezoning would come at the same time, so you would review the zoning as well as the comprehensive plan for final adoption. So looking at this new southern entrance, and thanks to this board, the River Hall residents, once the Alico extension is developed, will be able to get from the new southern entrance all the way down to the airport or to Gulf Coast Town Center. In Lehigh, south of River Hall, because of the road network system and the canals, the access point number 4 that we are constructing now, you have a very hard time getting to the west. So access point 5 allows that the residents to be able to move to the south without using I-75, which we think is a great benefit. And as you know, the right-of-way has been acquired for the extension, and it is fully funded in the capital improvement program. I'm going to briefly go over some engineering and traffic, but those consultants are here if you have more detailed questions. Lee County Utilities has available potable water and sanitary sewer for the proposed density requested. And the existing River Hall utility systems were designed for this size of density and development footprint. Water management, we do have an ERP in place. It was issued in 2005. As I mentioned, the development footprint is unchanged, the preserve is unchanged, and no changes are proposed to the established discharge rates within that permit. Transportation, the increase in units will not trigger a needed roadway improvement beyond those already anticipated without this addition in the Long Range 2045 program as well as the 26 capital improvement program. The southern entrances will enhance fire and EMS and River Hall accessibility, and road impact fee is estimated by the proposed request at $4.9 million. In conclusion, I agree with the findings and conclusions within the staff report. In my professional opinion, the requested density increase is consistent with other policies within the LEED plan, internally consistent within those goals and policies. And infrastructure is in place to support the proposed density and the requested conversion in future land use. The proposed density is consistent with neighboring densities, Portico, 345, and Lehigh, and development trends in the area. And no changes are proposed to the development footprint. That concludes my portion of the program. Russell has some summary slides, but if you have any questions for me, I'm available.
Any questions for the planner, Ms. Saban, at this time? No? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just a few summary points as we wrap up the presentation. Number one, the density added by this plan amendment will utilize existing infrastructure and infrastructure that's already in place, and will maximize the efficient use of that infrastructure. And rather than opening up new areas for extensions of infrastructure and development, this will utilize infrastructure that's already in place. And it's important to recognize that it will do this without altering the existing development footprint that's already been approved for River Hall, and without altering preserve areas or environmentally sensitive areas that have already been preserved on the site. Secondly, it is consistent with previously approved plan amendments in this area that have recognized that increased densities and intensities are appropriate along this area. This includes the recent future land use map amendment for Portico, the recent future land use map amendment for Buckingham 345, and the plan amendment for the commercial acreage directly across the street from the River Hall entrance. And finally, this plan amendment meets the relevant criteria for future land use map amendments found in Chapter 163. The proposed amendment is internally consistent with other portions of the LEED plan, including the densities and intensities of surrounding properties that include the recent plan amendments that I mentioned, as well as being internally consistent with the Colusa K Shores community plan. And the plan amendment is supported by relevant and appropriate data and analysis. That concludes our presentation in chief. Our other consultants, Mr. Baracco, Mr. Lung, Mr. Johnson, are all available for in-depth questions if you have any questions in their areas of expertise. This is a transmittal hearing, and as Jennifer mentioned, there is a concurrent rezoning pending. The transmittal of this plan amendment would allow for review by the state, and at that point the zoning would move forward and ultimately would come back to you with the plan amendment for your consideration for adoption. So no final action is being taken at this hearing. So with that, if you have any questions of me or our team, be happy to address them.
Very good. What questions do we have? Any? Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, at this time, I'll open the hearing up for public comment on the River Hall Comprehensive Plan Amendment. I've got a stack of cards that I'll run through, and then once I complete the cards, I will make a call for anybody else who wishes to speak in public comment at the end. Briefly, before everyone comes up to speak in public comment, when you approach the podium, you'll see at the top corner there's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. In order to be fair and make sure we give everybody their chance to speak today, the time limit in our code is 5 minutes. So I'm going to be very punctual on that time limit just to make sure we get everybody in and give them their chance to speak today. So when your yellow light comes on, I think you'll have about a minute left. I think the timer counts you down, but just you'll want to watch that while you're up there. And then the other thing, just to be courteous and preserve a sense of decorum here, we wouldn't want to boo any of the speakers or even clap for any of the speakers. We want everybody to feel free to share their comments without being intimidated today as they speak. So I'll call the first speaker is Paul Griffith, and then after Paul Griffith will be Joe Lundquist.
A couple things for you guys.
Okay, yeah, hand them to the clerk real quick. Is there a way to, is it something you wanted us to look at while you're talking?
Well, if you can see what I'm talking about. Paul Griffith, I live in in Hampton Lakes. We purchased our home back in 2018. When we bought it, we were handed this nice piece of paper from our builder, which information obviously they got from the developer. Miles of winding trails. If they can show me 1/10 of a mile of a winding trail, I'll be happy. Green spaces. I have yet to find a green space in our community, back when the homes are. future town square with retail, shopping, dining, a firehouse, and more. Obviously, the county did their part because we have a firehouse going in. But now, because of, and I'm going to say the word greed, our community is being stripped of a major amenity that everybody bought in to purchase. And that was our main thing because we want to do walking trails and we like the idea, like Babcock, of a small community center where we could go to a restaurant or a small retail shop. But now we want to change that to condos. I'm sorry. To me, this sounds like bait and switch. You get everybody to buy, and now we want to build condos. No, back up, do what you promised, and then go forward. There's plenty of land up there. The whole school thing is unbelievable. We have room for 147 more students. You can't even get down the parkway at school time because it's clogged with cars, and now you want to add more. The southern entrance, I don't know how that benefits the school. Maybe a school bus, because the only people that are supposed to use that exit are River Hall residents, not Lehigh Acres or everywhere else. That's in and out for residents and a school bus. Not access to get to school for everybody to get through there. All right? No, everybody out here, nobody lives in River Hall that I can see here. Greenpoint doesn't. This is our community. And we're hoping you guys stand behind us and give us what we deserve and what was told we were going to get. If they want to put that in and then go from there, that's fine. Gated community, that's a joke. Those gates haven't worked since we've been here. 6 o'clock at night, you go through. Our gates are supposed to be down. One gate's like this, one gate's like that. You come at 3 o'clock, the gates are off. Somebody goes in and takes the gates off. Come on, this is a joke. At a CDD meeting, somebody spoke that the builders are making record dollars in Southwest Florida. Okay? Use some of that money to help the residents you're building for. And that's where it should be. The school, you can't get by there because there's not enough parking for residents to pick up their kids. That needs to be addressed. Maybe Greenpoint can take some of that land and donate it to school so that people can get in and access the school. Because the school's not doing anything. Residents are, 80's a nightmare there. You all know we lost 2 residents there. And nothing's, we had a little bit of enforcement there. It's gone. You still got the same problem. That area is a nightmare. Traffic is a failure. So we're just going to add more to the failure? That's not right. Take care of the residents, not the developer. You're supposed to represent us. We're the ones that vote for you. None of them live, I doubt hardly any of them live in the league. Greenpoint don't. So please, stand by the people that vote for you. I can't really say anything about the other stuff because everything I see that said future development, do I want it? No. But put the things in that were promised first, then let's talk about coming back.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Griffith. At this time, I'll call Joe Lundquist, followed by Georgette Lundquist. Good morning, sir.
Morning. I'm Joe Lundquist. I live in River Hall. I've lived there since the beginning. First thing I wanted to mention is at the land planning meeting that we attended, we presented a petition that had around 1,050 signatures opposed to this, what's happening. They are proposing in their plan lots that are 40.5 foot wide, which is not consistent with anything in that community at the present time, either River Hall Country Club or the Hampton Lakes. I think that's really detrimental and degrading to the houses and homes that are there. Traffic will be increased immensely in the community and without. They mentioned the south entrance that they're putting in. Well, that leads out to Cemetery Road, which goes to Buckingham. road. Buckingham Presbyterian Church used to do fish fries on Friday nights a few years ago, and they would do 400 dinners. They can't do that now. They can only do maybe 120, and it's because of the traffic on Buckingham Road. Just coming out Cemetery Lane on the Buckingham Road is going to be a real problem. It's just going to increase the traffic on Buckingham Road. Increased density in the country club section will raise or cause the bundled golf community to go up maybe to around 1,200 units or 1,200 doors. A golf course should have no more than around 800 or 900 doors. So this is just going to really make getting on the golf course difficult. Well, I was going to mention some of the points that were just made by the gentleman before me, but I certainly second all the things that he said. And finally, I just would like you to think about living in River Hall, in the country club section, or in Hampton Lakes. Just think about that from our perspective. We don't want the things that are being put forward in this zoning situation. And some of you I know are land planners and developers. Maybe you all are to some extent. But I think, from at least my perspective, I think people that are developers should recuse themselves from even voting on this topic. And I will close with that.
All right, Mr. Lundquist, thank you very much for your comments. At this time, I'll call Georgette Lundquist, followed by Robert Stark. Morning, George.
Good morning. I'm Georgette Lundquist. I have resided in River Hall since the January of '07. No one else here has resided there that long. We've lost some members from moving. We've been through everything. Mr. Hammond, you were through the last one with us. You had just been appointed by Governor Scott at the time. We lost our fight for the density increase. And this article was written by Grady Myers after that increase was permitted. As I have underlined here, the water, the infrastructure, the amenities, the road infrastructure, Grady, in his own words, said it is sized for up to $29.99. Nothing has changed in our community for any of those infrastructures since that was written and the permits were given for that particular density to $26.95. Now they want to go to $31.84. Like I said, we have been there since 2006. We were presented at the Welcome House with beautiful maps that had all the platted lots and everything. And until we started with this last density, we never knew that the 2,000 lots had already been platted, and that's what the county had granted Landmar, then Greenpoint. The future development, we assumed, was all part of that 2,000 lots, doors, houses, whatever you want to call them. But obviously, that was not the case. So it was another thing, like this gentleman said, a kind of bait and switch. Didn't matter what questions, and many times I spoke to Grady. We were in there, we lived in Colonial at the time, and we would go over there every couple days and talk to them and ask questions, but I guess we didn't ask the right questions as to what was going to be done, because we assumed that was all part of the 2,000 units in the development until we went through that last density increase. That's how I got the land planning, or the property appraisals, and I physically counted every lot on every street, and that's how we found out. We have a brand new street in there right now between us and the back of the property called Weston Manor that has 160 lots on it. That was never a road there. And when this first, when we had the density before, there was actually 7,500 platted lots in Lee County ready for building. That it was some on Buckingham Road, Portico was part of that, and then they got their extra density. I just don't quite understand how in their own heart they can tell people things and then it turns out that something else is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lundquist. Robert Stark, followed by Kathy Glandorf.
Just give me an area map. How do I get in there?
Yeah, back up to the one that has the new plat on it, too, for Hampton Lakes.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Robert Stark, and I'm a resident of River Hall Country Club and the River Hall communities. Today, I'd like to speak to not a cancellation of the density, but a reduction of the density. And I'd like to see the reduction of the density from 489 to 373, and I'll give you the rationale behind that. And I'd like to thank Jennifer for allowing me to utilize the slide here as a reference point. Greenpoint is requesting 405 plats, specifically in the southeast corner of the property, based on a minimum lot size of 40.5 feet for a single-family dwelling. Now, that was an administrative amendment that was signed off by staff a few months ago, I guess, and it's all in conjunction with this whole density argument. So now, Greenpoint has the ability to build on 40.5 feet. Custom in Hampton Lakes is 50 feet. Custom in River Hall Country Club is 55 feet as minimum lot sizes that have actually been built. So that's what I want to refer to, the 55 feet and the 50 feet. And in fact, the bold highlighted area, which is currently under the platting review, those lots are 50 feet. So now what they've done is the argument that was used by Greenpoint to justify the increase is that there'll be a minimum density impact at the macro level. I believe it was 1.2 to 1.4 or 1.4 to 1.6. And that's fine at the macro level if you look at the overall thousands of acres involved. But in reality, there's
300 acres, because even where they talked about the acreage where they want to put this, there was a bit of an exaggeration where they included the driving range as part of the calculation of the acreage. So it's really about 300 acres and 405 houses, plus lakes, plus roadways. So it's quite a bit of a density change. Now, the 45-foot frontage is inconsistent with the, as I said, with the adjoining communities. And I base this only on a back of the napkin calculation, because that's all the information that's actually been provided for this future area. It's quite nebulous, but you know there's going to be 405 doors in there. In some of the other documents that they put forward, they've also pointed to multifamily or mixed-use multifamily, single-family, and we just can't tell them apart. So at this point, I believe that reducing, doing the math, taking the 55-foot calculation, taking the 40.5-foot calculation, the delta there is a reduction to 292 plats in the southwest or southeast corner versus the 405. And I request that the commissioners please consider this and please send the proposal back to the drawing boards and reevaluate at a lower density. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. At this time, I'd like to call Kathy Glandorf.
Hi, gentlemen. Good morning. My name is Kathy Glandorf. I live on Windsor Way, 16455 Windsor Way in River Hall, the country club. And I just want to make a couple of really quick points. When we moved in January of 2020, so exactly 3 years ago, we did see that same covenants that everyone is talking about. And in those covenants, there was a sign, there was a statement there that said not to exceed, and now they are exceeding. So whatever it was, those additional 400 plus units are the exceeding. We basically feel like we had a contract on that covenant, and now they are reneging on the contract. We were lied to. I want to reiterate some of the points that were made today. I'd like you to find a hiking trail in River Hall Country Club, in Hampton Lakes. Jennifer, very kindly, she made a comment that we all live in gated communities. Well, River Hall Country Club technically is a gated community. Cascades technically is a gated community. Over and over again, people who live in Hampton Lakes are told they do not live in a gated community. They've been told that repeatedly in a number of emails and messages from Vanya, the property manager. So please, that doesn't count anymore. And that was something that was promised to all of them, that they lived in a gated community, and they are now told that they don't. Two other points I'd like to make. One is I don't understand the relevance of Buckingham and Portico having an increased density. Why does that have any impact, or why does that relate to what we're doing right now? Just because, you know, I bet every one of your mothers said to you at one time, well, if Stevie's going to jump off the bridge, are you going to do it too? Well, it makes no sense. So what? They get an increased density. Why should we have to also get an increased density? It doesn't make sense. And I don't recall anyone ever asking me if that Alico Road extension would be a benefit to my life. That was never asked of any of the people in the community that live in River Hall. Alico Road, that extension going down through Lehigh Acres and down to the airport, I defy you to ask anyone in River Hall, I defy you right now to ask anyone in River Hall if they were asked if that would make a difference in their lives, because we weren't. So again, that comment about we think it would be better, well, they think it would be better, not necessarily that we think it would be better. And basically, we feel like we were lied to. I mean, that's really it. And by approving this proposal, you are just perpetuating that lie. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments this morning. At this time, I'd like to call, does anyone else wish to speak in public comment? Okay, if so, please come to the podium and just state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name's Daniel Mall. I live in Cascades of River Hall, which is one of the 3 subsets of the River Hall development. We've been there 3 years now, and in the last year we've been introduced into this interesting discussion on the expansion, not of our part of the community, but of the other 2 subsets of River Hall. 3 things that I'd like to point out, and I do know I hear people frustrated by what they get told by the developer not necessarily being true, but but that's not your problem. The real problem is what you talked about is the resources, are they available to provide for this additional development, i.e. water, sewer, electricity, and road space, that kind of process. So I will keep my focus on that. 3 things I would mention. Number 1, currently there is 1 entrance to River Hall out onto 80. In fact, when the question was brought up, I wondered why we don't have one on the other side that would, such as Veranda does. Veranda down the road has 2 primary entrances, and they are half the size of a community that they are espousing that we will become. Currently, there is only 1. Yes, it has a stoplight. That's awesome. It needs that stoplight. But if you come into our community, go out of this community today at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can't get out on one light because there's not enough road space, which is up where that white space is, right where the firehouse is being built. We don't have enough space in left turn lanes to get out of there now at the normal times. That's not adding what you're going to add, which is that 101 housing area up there by the entrance. Secondly, if you're going down 80 right now, from Buckingham going down, in fact, currently from 31 going back, in fact, just short of Buckingham is where the traffic stops at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock on any given morning. On the evening, it's starting to go the other way because of what's going on 31. There's not enough turn lane. The reality is the road structure on 80 between River Hall down past 31 when it becomes 3 lanes can't handle the traffic as it is now. And yet, and really is problematic is the corner on Buckingham. Buckingham's a 2-lane road that goes up there. You currently have 4 major developments occurring down where they've just started them along Buckingham that will feed that much more traffic up in front of Riverdale High School that if you go there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it will take you 30 minutes to 45 minutes coming from Lehigh to get past that light because there's that much traffic coming up north. That whole road structure cannot handle what we have now, and yet you're talking about adding another 489 units. So that's concern in terms of the traffic factor, whatever they're saying. Even on 80's problem, secondly, traffic coming out of River Hall. And it's wonderful they have the idea of 2 gates on the south side. The 1 gate goes out on Cemetery Road, which will go over to Buckingham, which will only exacerbate Buckingham's problem, which is only going to get extremely worse. So unless in the next 5 years you're going to turn Buckingham into a 4-lane road going north and south, that's just going to become a big parking lot. Nice that they're talking about a 5th gate out the back, but again, for the rest of us who live on the north end of this, which is the main entrance going in and out of River Hall, that's where everybody's going. I know they're talking about those new gates. They don't right now, and probably for the next 10 years, will only dump into an area where there's 2-lane roads going out into the Lehigh Acres and or down to Buckingham. My lights come on. The last point I'm trying to make is I have real heartburn with the issue of that 101 apartment unit being put in right next to an elementary school and the entrance of this community. Right now at 8 o'clock, as several people mentioned, elementary school creates major congestions on our entranceway connected to the elementary school. Not us, but the elementary school. You add a 101-unit apartment complex right there next to it, that's going to triple or quadruple and just make it totally a congested mess for anybody who lives in the community trying to come in or go out of that community during school hours, which is from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock and from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you for your time this morning. And would you like to speak, sir? Okay, yep, say, when you get to the podium, go ahead and state that for the record.
My name is Phil Safransky. I'm actually a resident of Cascades. 4 years approximately coming down here. I know that there's great enthusiasm for growth, you know, and growth is necessary in business and in life. But as you take a look at the current infrastructure that's mentioned, you know, and I'll first start with that light that was mentioned being put in 2017, and 2 residents lost their life there. Now, you had the infrastructure there, you had roads, you had the lighting, but something simple that could have saved their lives is the speed limit coming in off of the main town area where you have the Publix and other businesses. And so, as mentioned, there's also development that's occurring out to our east. And so if you would have just simply had a lower speed limit coming through that area, maybe that accident could have actually been avoided. I don't know. Also involving the infrastructure, you know, we kind of take a look at this little segment map here, but BOCC, as that is being developed, is actually going to have a great strain on the area. 31 is only a 2-lane road. It's got to obviously grow as that community is going to end up growing. Let's talk about hospitals. Look at the news. My brother-in-law just actually went to the hospital, and the waiting rooms and trying to get admitted. I just heard the other day that the hospital was close to 100% capacity. You know, again, as we continue to add more people, and I've lived in Chicago, I've never seen growth this aggressive. You know, I came out of a community that was established, well-built, but, you know, there's, on the segment that showed that, you know, the infrastructure is here as far as water and everything, and as we develop, you know, it's going to be able to handle, you know, the community should be able to handle that. Well, what about Pelican Preserve? What stands out in my mind is the news stories of, you know, people not having water running properly in their homes. I know just traveling, going to Bass Pro Shop, traveling down that road, I'd see signs that watch for flooding on roads, and I know that they've had flooding in the community when there's great rains. But guess what? I'm sure at the time that things were presented to you that, you know, this is going to be able, you know, our infrastructure will be able to handle the people, the water. Well, it didn't. You know, it's kind of failing people there right now. And so, you know, as mentioned, you know, growth is fine, but everything that had been mentioned by prior residents will only grow as we move forward here. So, and again, as we are going to move forward, you know, maybe you do have to take a look at the hospital and healthcare systems to be able to manage these people as they've come in the great numbers that they have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Very good. All right, at this time, does anybody else wish to speak in public comment? Okay, come forward and just say your name for the record. And if there are any more speakers, if you could just stand by the door, and I'll make sure we call you after this gentleman. Okay.
My name is Jay Edwards. I live in the country club. I actually have a question, so I don't know if this is permissible, but my question is, with the Barrasso proposal or review that was done a few moments ago, if I understood correctly, in the future section, I think there was a reference to golf and more doors or homes. And I'm wondering if does that imply that there's a commitment for additional golf holes, and can that be further explained to clarify?
We'll give them a chance to answer that question.
Thank you.
Okay, very much. Thank you. All right. All right, seeing no further speakers then, at this time we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll offer the applicant the opportunity to address the questions that were raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity for a few comments here at the end, and I'll be very, very brief. With regard to the question that was asked at the end with regard to the golf club, there does remain an option, but it's not commitment at this point to do additional golf holes within River Hall. That is one of the options that would still remain. It has always been there to do additional golf holes on that portion of the project. Briefly, with regard to some of the comments with regard to the total dwelling units and the lot sizes and the location of some of the residential uses, including the multifamily type uses that are proposed on the towards the northern end of the site in that plan amendment area. Simply encourage you to keep in mind what this hearing is about. It's a transmittal hearing for a plan amendment that would allow consideration of increased density and unit counts within River Hall. The actual details of where the units go, the lot sizes, locations of some of the uses are zoning issues that would be handled through the companion rezoning that's also pending at this point and would not come to you unless the plan amendment is transmitted, then comes back and the zoning is reviewed by the hearing examiner and everything comes back to you at one time for final consideration. And with regard to the transportation concerns and issues external to the community, certainly we would simply reiterate what staff has said and what our consultant has verified is that the plan amendment will not cause any additional segments of roadways to fail outside the community, either in the 2045 long-range plan or the 2026 short-range plan. We meet all regulatory aspects of concurrency within the county for the plan amendment, and the zoning and development order will certainly take a harder look at the transportation as it goes through those processes later on at that point, and that will come back to you at a later point. So with that, I'd certainly encourage adoption, or excuse me, transmittal of the plan amendment to the state for review. Again, if there's anything that you'd like us to get into more in depth on with regard to planning, transportation, environmental, or engineering, we're happy to do that at this point.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this time? No? Commissioner Sandelli? Mr. Schropp, I had one question. So, you know, since right, we're at the phase where we're really just focused on the density number, I did want to see if you guys would address the editorial comments that were made with the 2,999 units. What is your response to that?
Okay. I can give you a fairly lengthy response if I can, because it's one of the problems I have is I've been around so long that the history of land use kind of comes floating back to me. But you know, throughout the history of River Hall, the planning and design has always been there to accommodate more density than what the zoning has accommodated. And you got to ask yourself, why is that? And frankly, the answer to the number that was put in the editorial, the op-ed piece by Grady, as well as what's been approved in the zoning, is that the density has always been somewhat artificially constrained in River Hall by a couple of things. The first is the DRI thresholds. You know, it's no coincidence that in 1999 the threshold or the unit count for River Hall was approved at 1,598 units. That's 2 less than the 80% of the DRI threshold, which was a number that you typically didn't want to exceed. And then when the second zoning was approved in 2005, the unit count was at 1,999. Well, that's 1 less than the DRI threshold at that point in the process. And it was a common strategy that you tried to avoid doing a DRI. It was costly. It was involved an extensive unnecessary review, and that's why ultimately the DRI process has been all but shuttled off. At this point, you had earlier today a DRI that was seeking rescission because it's practically built out and there's no need to have the DRI anymore. In 2014, when that editorial was written, the 2,999 was 1 less than the DRI threshold at that point, which was 3,000 units. So, you know, finally, you know, when River Hall came back for the plan amendment, or comes back for this plan amendment now, where there are no DRI thresholds that are applicable to the site. Moreover, the last effort that we made to increase the density and do the plan amendment in the 2015 era, we were dealing with an artificial constraint called overriding public necessity. which is if there's anything more artificial than that in land use regulatory aspects, I'm not aware of it. But that was ultimately found not to impact the density in River Hall, but also was removed from your comprehensive plan, not only in the Colusa Shores plan, but also in other plans. So this is the first time really that we've been able to look at River Hall without any kind of artificial constraints in terms of what the capacity of the land can accommodate, not only from an infrastructure standpoint, but an environmental standpoint. And I keep going back to the density numbers that Ms. Sapin provided, which is really the density here overall is still only 1.6 units per acre and fairly within the confines of what the community and the area allows. That's my long answer to your short question.
I appreciate the answer and the transparency in the answer too. So you basically, what I heard you say is, so as this has been planned, you've always tried to come in just under what the DRI threshold would be. And so that's happened a couple times now. Currently, is there a DRI threshold?
Not applicable
No.
at this point.
Okay, not applicable.
Let me back up. I was not the project attorney in 1999 or 2005. I'm just
for this one. Okay.
Yeah, I just would submit that was probably the reason, because it was not an uncommon strategy at that point.
Okay, so I understand the strategy then. So let me ask this question then. So we know what was said in the editorial about the 2,999 units. This is going to get us around 3,148, if I'm remembering. Yeah, right. Okay, so let me ask that question. Is the infrastructure sized appropriately for that number of units?
I'm an attorney. Let me get Carl Baracco here to address that question, because he's more familiar with the engineering and certainly sewer and water. So, Carl, if I could, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carl Baracco for the record. It is, and I'd just quickly point to two documents. As you've heard, this project is governed by a community development district, and when that district was established, an engineer's report was done. And that engineer's report in 2005 contemplated not only the existing units there, but it also contemplated the process that we've been through to increase density, and it contemplated today's process. So that is documented in the original engineer's report for River Hall. It's also, again, documented in the first supplement to that engineer's report, which was done in 2019, and it's further documented in an appending supplement number 2 for the engineer's report for River Hall. So all those three documents document the initial density and the anticipated future density that we're discussing today, yes.
Okay, so there is the infrastructure then in place to handle that. Very good. And then maybe this is a good question for your planner. I see, obviously the two areas in white there that say future on this. Will this number of units complete the build out for those two areas?
The companion, yes and no. The companion rezoning that goes with it does increase the project by 10 acres. So you can see up by State Road 80, there's a rectangular black box. The zoning will incorporate that into the project. So the density for the rezoning application that you will see will be slightly more because the land will be 10 acres greater. But to the other part of your question, yes, that future area down in the bottom is where all the density will be going, with the exception of up top that we've talked about.
And have you calculated how many lots you can fit in that area, and compared that to the number that you're asking for? And what is that?
Yes, I personally have done probably 100 site plans for this project. And if you look at our zoning, our approved zoning and our one that is going through the process right now, townhouses, multifamily, single family, there's a wide range of residential uses that are allowed. And if you look at River Hall right now, you can see there's varied in lot sizes. So really the final build out, what will be constructed, is really market driven. You know, and to the question about the golf course, there's no commitment with this zoning or with the proposed zoning or this comprehensive plan amendment whether the golf course would or would not be included. And of course, that would greatly affect the densities that would be constructed.
While I've got you here as a land planner, the other question that came up a lot today was the school traffic. As a professional land planner, what can be done? What advice? What recommendations? What best practices can we look at to help alleviate the school traffic situation?
Well, I will say, and as a mother, getting the children as close to the school as possible is always beneficial, you know, when your buses are driving all over the county. So by having additional residential units here and expanding possibly the family community, I think it's a great benefit to have within the same community. Children would be able to take their bikes to school in this community, whereas, you know, other than parents taking them and driving them to school. Now, there is always increased traffic around schools, and that is just the nature of the school. And I know in Cape Coral, where I live, very often you just have to be aware of those zones and be careful during school time.
Appreciate that answer. So as a planner, your planning answer was, though, that obviously living closer in proximity to the school will create a shorter commute time and alleviate some of the traffic congestion that comes from busing folks from other parts of the area into the school then and driving them.
Absolutely. So adding the density near an already constructed school is a great place to add that density.
Okay. Commissioners, any further questions? Yeah, Commissioner Green.
I would like to bring up, Chairman, if I may, this is one of the great examples that commissioners, the position we're put in, that I don't really think the general public really understands sometimes. This is a situation where a developer is meeting the criteria legally, and the county is recommending to us that we should move this project to transmittal and let them see what ultimately is brought back to us. So we're not approving it for a final decision, but we're put in a position where as the developer puts this in front of us, he's meeting the criteria that the county is requiring to move this forward. If we choose as a board not to move it forward, then we are exposing the county to lawsuits. So we have a choice here to make, and that is we don't have legal grounds to deny this to move forward. So I just think it's important that we've talked, you know, at other meetings and discussed this about how the fact that it puts us in a position, and I know living in that community, I pass by River Hall every day. I have for years. You probably ride by and see that I have a business right down the road that's we're about to move our offices there. So I understand the problem. There's a reason why I wanted to become a county commissioner, to hopefully in the future address those problems. I want to make sure that you know I am going to set up a meeting and come and explain to you what I think we can do as a community out there to solve some of the issues that you have. If we don't, it's going to develop in the same way some of the county is in the past. So I want you to know I'm going to do that. I'll be more than glad to tell you what I hope we can do in the future, but I want you to understand the position that commissioners are in. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Lundquist, no, we don't do questions and answers at this point. You've had your opportunity to speak. Yeah, we've concluded the public comment. Thank you, Ms. Lundquist. All right, Commissioner Sandelli, any comments or questions that you'd like to ask?
After the whole discussion, you know, I always pick out a few key words. I mean, we are growing, and we have to deal with the realities of growth, and that growth usually translates into density. That involves a lot of different things. As you said, you know, we're taking a look at transmitting this forward for another review. And I think that your comments today were well placed, and I hope they'll be taken into consideration. There probably are some modifications to this overall plan that can make it work. And somebody that's familiar with the property, such as our commissioner there, I think is beneficial. I think the only thing that I wrestle with all the time, and I came out of a real estate background, is that when the project is done or projects are done, in the end, does it work? You know, and that's where I think the tweaks and things can be addressed. My concern about this is ingress and egress, you know, and I hope in the review process that the issues of ingress and egress can be accounted for. so that the project works. And I'll leave it at that.
Very good. All right. At this time, if there's no further discussion or questions, would somebody wish to make a motion on the item?
I'll make the motion to transmit.
Okay, the motion is to transmit from Commissioner Sandelli.
Second.
Seconded from Commissioner Greenwell. Do we have any further discussion on the motion then that's on the floor? Okay, seeing none, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, is there any further business before us for the day? All right, seeing no further business, we're adjourned.